Hello, this is Abhishek Sengupta, and welcome back. We are here with another episode of Knowledge Talks. We have with us someone special today. It's Ted Clark. Let me give you a brief introduction of Ted. Ted is based in Sierra Madre, California. He has served as Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer since 2019. Ted knows how important it is to deliver a reliable product while catering to important macro trends. He strives for leading development of lightweight, sustainable products that solve problems for businesses and consumers and reduce environmental impact on the planet. Ted is also the author of Shipping Clerk to CEO, which chronicles his rise from a 19-year-old shipping clerk to CEO of a global company in just over 2 decades. It reveals how critical mentors were to his success. He previously held the role of Senior Vice President, Royal Adhesives. Prior to joining H.B. Fuller, he had led Royal Adhesives and Sealands IMC as President and Chief Executive Officer from 2003 to 2017, which was acquired by H.B. Fuller in the year 2017. He also served as President and Chief Executive Officer for Burke Industries Inc. Various leadership roles at PRC DeSoto International, formerly Courtaulds Aerospace Inc., including President and Chief and Executive Officer, held various management roles. He currently serves on the board of Boulder Scientific Company and is on the foundation board of USC Vertigo Health Hospital at La Canta, California. As Ted is here with us, we have taken a wonderful and a very, very interesting topic for discussion: mentorship and entrepreneurship. Ted, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you. Ted, I'm going straight to the point. My first point to you is mentorship as an overview. We hear the term mentorship quite often. This is one of the most used terms nowadays. However, to utter surprise, many of the people are not well versed with this term. Many treat this as some sort of teaching, others treat this as some sort of, business management course, but this is quite different. We would like to know from you that what exactly mentorship represents in entrepreneurship. Over to you, Ted.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, it's a great topic, and for me, a mentor really is in the end a trusted advisor, right? So it's a relationship with normally between two people. And when I say a trusted advisor, I think that runs in both directions. And I'll give you some examples later of, the opportunity as a mentor to actually learn a lot from the people that you're working with. The other thing is, mentorships are either, they can be formal and they can be informal. And I think the best approach, if you're looking to, learn through a mentoring relationship, is to try and do both, right? So have a formal mentor that you can work with, but also really develop a broad set of informal mentors, which kind of connects mentorship with networking. And then, the whole, if you go back to the basics of it, being a trusted advisor has a lot loaded in that, right? As a mentor, you need to be very open, and also you need to create trust with the person that you're working with, right? So typically, a good mentor is might be somebody that you're working with in the company that you're at, but you have a relationship that's outside of the line operations where you can be open and honest about things you want to understand or learn or know about, or concerns or anxiety that you might have as somebody working in an organization where you're trying to develop your skills and and long term, you want to grow in in the environment that you're selected to work in.
Wow, that's awesome, Ted. Ted, I got three very good pointers from you. Number one is considering the mentor as a trusted advisor, because in business, advisory is everything. Our accountants, our advisors, and everything, auditors, they all charge us for advisory. So trusted advisor is a very, very good point, because mentor has to be a trusted advisor whom a business founder can really trust. Second is, the relationship has to be both, formal and informal. Probably based on the circumstances, it has its own advantage, disadvantage. And third thing, which I really like, that, at times this mentorship even leads to a networking connection. It's said that network is equal to net worth. Is the better network is
Right.
equal to better net worth. So this is really important in mentorship. It's very good points which you have mentioned, Ted. Now, this takes me to my next point, importance of mentorship. Mentorship is very crucial for the startups or any company which is looking for a head start. This can act as a real guiding point during various phases of business. Now, mentors encourage and enable another person's professional or personal development. Though using mentorship and some kind of strong mentorship creates a pipeline of talents. How do you describe the importance of mentorship in business, or probably in the journey of entrepreneurship? Over to you, Ted.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's critical. And I'll maybe give you some examples from my own experience. But if you want to develop, and particularly in the entrepreneurial sense, part of what you're doing is about risk taking, right? So, many entrepreneurs, have a strong sense of what they want to do and what they want to accomplish, and the risks that they're willing to take. And sometimes it's helpful for an entrepreneur to also, hear from other entrepreneurial people about their journeys and some of the pitfalls and some of the positive things that can happen on an entrepreneurial journey. For me, as I said, I mean, I put this in my book, but I just started as a high school graduate working as a shipping clerk in a company that I found through the classified ads and interviewed and got a job there. And once I got there, I became very curious about all the things that they did there and how they worked and why they worked and what their history was and all this. And so, working hard and kind of demonstrating to people that I was worthy of more people, more senior, paying attention to me, gave me an opportunity to create relationships with people, pretty open relationships where I could ask some questions. Right, I was pretty much just a blank slate, so I could ask very, very fundamental questions in those days. And so most of my mentors early on were more informal mentors, right? So, doing things around the factory, talking to different people, talking to the engineers, talking to the manufacturing people, talking to the marketing people. It all sort of intersected around this shipping department that I worked in, and that's where I learned the power of learning through mentors, because most of them you're just basically listening to their stories, right? You're asking questions, how they managed a certain situation, or what they thought was important, or how a new product was introduced and why the market would accept it, and so forth. And so by really being a good listener and demonstrating some value to those people, so that they'd be willing to talk to you as a young person, was really important. Later on, I had a more formal mentor who was the CEO of the company, and that was also a very trusting relationship. So again, having the opportunity to pretty much ask any question, to try and to just be involved in things, to listen to how things were done, try to understand the strategy of the business, and so forth. All of these things were extremely positive learning experiences. But one thing I reflect on often is they have there's responsibility on both sides, right? I mean, I had to create those relationships And I also had to be a good listener. On the other hand, busy people had to, find time to, spend time with me and answer those questions. So developing those relationships was probably been one of the more satisfying, if not the most satisfying part of my entire career. Not a day really goes by that I don't really remember and think about one of those early mentors and what they, some of the principles that I learned from them and still apply to this day in operating, a global business like H.B. Fuller.
Wow, that's pretty interesting, I must say. How you have grown up from a shipping clerk to the CEO. It's something in a learning lesson for all of us. I have noted out four very good points which you have actually mentioned. First is the risk taking, because what at times what happens, the business founders are very obsessed with their with their ideas, and they have very strong conviction that they can do that. But it's always good to know, discuss the things with a fellow entrepreneurs or person who has already crossed that stage and learn from their pitfalls, because everything cannot succeed in business. There are more failures than successes. So it's good to know from their pitfalls. So this is point number one. Second thing which I have noted is, questioning and knowing from others. As you said, you keep on asking very fundamental questions to your seniors, to your managers and everything. And that's, getting, it's something, what we have studied in books is completely different at times for what we are, knowing from practicality. At times practice and, books are a bit different, that reality check, we can definitely get it. And third is definitely, share of opinions. For a single kind of situation, there could be different opinions. It's always good to know the opinion of an expert or probably a senior person. And that's how we can develop ourselves and reach to the next level. And the fourth point, which I really like the most, is the responsibility and listening, because you have both the responsibility of the both side, this side and that side both. But it's important that one should be a good listener. So this is something which is very rare phenomenon in today's world, because everyone want to speak, and listening capacity is going down day by day. But fourth point is my favorite, whatever you have said right now. Right. It takes me to my next point: mentor and mentee relation. During the course of mentorship, it is important to get into a good mentor and mentee relationship. It is more of a situation, which is based on trust and based on real, affection, I must say. At times, the relation turns too formal, but at times, it is a bit informal as well. In spite of this, it is important to have a great relation between mentor and mentee. At times it is situational in nature. At times it is, based on certain long-term goals, short-term goals, and different factors come in place. Could you please enlighten us on this mentor-mentee relation, how it should be and how it, must, what should be the ideal relationship, and how should this go on in long run and in short run? Over to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things here, right? So, and I've been involved in all kinds of different companies and different types of approaches to mentoring. And, some can be very formal, where you're matched up, you're sort of matched up with somebody. Maybe you're matched up with a high, somebody who's a high potential person that they want to match up with somebody. As I said, I mean, I'm a big advocate of the informal, find your own mentor approach, where, you're out, if you need to learn something and you should, as somebody who wants to get mentorship, you want to do it on the basis of self-directed learning, right? So I want to be mentored because, I want to understand this part of the business better, or I want to understand the technicalities of accounting and finance better, or, maybe it's chemistry or manufacturing or whatever it might be. So I think the balance between informal and formal should be probably weighted more on the informal than the formal. Now, all that being said, they all have this kind of fundamental, important aspect to them, which is this trusting relationship. And as a mentor, you have to learn to be, very open and very confidential, right? I mean, you want to provide a protective, safe kind of environment for people to ask questions that they might not be willing to ask in a conference room setting or some other place, for fear of, being judged by other people in the organization and so forth. So I think that's I think that's the, kind of the, one of the key things. And then as a mentor, the other thing that I know at least I try to do is I try to approach it more from a Socratic kind of teaching philosophy, where you're not really trying to solve specific problems. You're really trying to get people to think about what they're trying to accomplish, or what the issue they're dealing with is, or where, whatever question that they have. You're not trying to sort of wrap it up into a bow. You're trying to build perspective around what that situation is, and maybe offer ideas about similar situations that you've been in as a mentor, and how you approach them, rather than try to help them solve a specific problem. And I think that's particularly around leadership, mentoring leaders, right? So if you're trying to mentor, people that are trying to deal with lots of different variables in what they're thinking about, where there's no right or wrong answer. You really want to help them build perspective around the things they should be thinking about as they develop what their approach is going to be. Sort of knowing that their answer to this might be different than I might do, that I might come to. But again, there's in many cases there's no really right or wrong answer. There's really just kind of sussing things out, understanding the perspective, and doing your due diligence and making a decision and driving forward, right? So those are the things that I want to see from somebody I'm mentoring, is if they're capable of doing those things and making their own decisions, whether they're successful or not. And if they're not successful, then that's okay. That's a risk that they took. And that's another thing that I think mentors really have to help people understand, particularly in organizations, is that it's okay to take risk. You just really have to understand what risk you're taking, right? So you have to think it through pretty carefully, so that you understand the risk you're taking and why you're taking the risk, so you can explain it later if it doesn't work out, the way that you'd hoped.
Pretty interesting, very, very interesting. I have just noted once more, 4 points. First is, you have rightly mentioned, it is a self-directed phenomenon, but one has to really, decide what exactly you are looking for mentorship. That's the self-directed one. This is a very nice term which you have used. Second is, there has to be always a balance between formal and informal. It cannot go too formal. It cannot be completely informal as well. Somewhere there has to be a balance between them. And of course, third point is this, what you have mentioned is you have to be open. A mentor has to be open, and confidentiality is one of the key criteria. And I must say it's one of the indispensable factors. There are many things which, a startup founder would like to discuss, and of course that person do not want that to leak it to the competitors, to the market, to anyone else. So confidentiality is definitely another point. And fourth is, think what people want to accomplish instead of achieving the goal. What exactly the founder want to accomplish is very important to know that first. Then it can really lead to a good option next one. Right. It takes me to my next point: mentorship and stages of business. Whenever most of the people think of mentorship, early stage of business comes in mind. But mentorship is required in the later stages of business as well. Many stages of business require a lot of mentorship, even in advanced journey. Do you think mentorship is required at the beginning, or is it required even in the later stages of business? Over to you.
Yeah, I think it's important in every stage, every stage of your business career, or public service career, whatever it might be. And just as a good example, for me personally, I worked for 17 years with private equity-backed companies who operate slightly different than public companies, particularly at the board level. And after I sold my company to H.B. Fuller, I started to attend the public board of directors meetings as part of the executive management team, and it gave me an opportunity to meet other public company directors who are CEOs of other companies, and so that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years. Really, is while I'm at H.B. Fuller, I'm taking the opportunity to understand a lot more about how a public company board works, what the role is for a public company, a board, some of the history and stories of the board members. And, that comes again, it's a little bit easier now in this stage of my career because, there's board meetings and board meeting dinners. And so you're both the formal and informal relationships with board members. So it never stops. I think the whole idea of lifelong learning, lifelong self-directed learning is a concept that you'll read more and more about, particularly with the internet and everything else, right? So you've got opportunities to learn. The podcasts that you're doing here is a great example of that. So yeah, I think it's critically important when you're young and you first start, and it's harder when you're younger when you first start because it's harder to find and develop relationships with mentors because of the sort of the power dynamics a little bit different, right? You're just a young person and you're maybe a little bit intimidated by the organization and a lot of people there, got a lot more experience. And so it's important from a management point of view to really make sure that young people get mentored. But mentorship throughout your entire career is I think it's one of the great things about actually having a career is having the opportunity to learn from other people.
Well, you have rightly pointed out, mentorship is required at every stage. And, you have really given your example. That's one of the finest example I have ever seen till now. And you have rightly pointed, it never stops. It's the lifelong learning. That's how, because every stage has its own learning, because whatever we have learned in, stage number 1, obviously same thing may or may not go on in the stage number 3, 4, 5, 6, because when the stages are increased, the learning also has to increase. This is one. And you have rightly pointed out that different stage have got different types of learning which is required. Early stage, it's a bit hard because, person maybe, probably it's the first time it's getting on, kind of mentorship, which is because it's completely different to, whenever a person is taking after 20 years, probably, that's already here. But of course, the learning has to continue, and mentorship is again a part of learning. It's a very good message which you have given.
Yeah,
now, I'll go for the next point. Mentorship and business model. Now, mentors brings his own set of skill, knowledge, and perception. They help a business and the owner look past the original scope and identify the weakness in the model or even in the business plan. They help in beating their tunnel vision. What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, well, I think it's having kind of started my own business and built it up, from a relatively small business to a much larger one. Particularly for entrepreneurs, right, who maybe starting younger than I did, certainly, in their sort of 20s and 30s, starting their own businesses and building them up. Having somebody that can help them kind of fundamental questions like, what, where, why, and how is where I always start, right? Which, if you think about it, it's all about like, okay, what's the vision? What's the strategy? What's the vision? What's the objective? Is the objective, aspirational and achievable? What's the strategy to support that objective? What tactics are you going to use? How, again, lots of times with the entrepreneurial businesses, they need lots of cash, right? So they need funding. They need, so you really have to know how to talk about and sell what you're trying to accomplish and what you're doing. So I think for entrepreneurs in particular, finding a trusted advisor that you can brainstorm with and, that has had some of these experiences, maybe run a much larger organization, the idea about management. I mean, one of the things about entrepreneurs is, they can be headstrong and they're normally very, very smart and very, very, have a lot of, will and commitment. But as companies get bigger and scale, they need to build a team underneath them, right? So how do they know what a good team looks like underneath them? And I think a mentor, relationship can help them with that. Again, as long as it's positive, it's got to be, again, I think, this idea of using this sort of Socratic method of, it's your business, you've got to make the decisions, but here's maybe some things to think about. or what are you concerned about? Open-ended questions, but trying to always kind of bring it back to that entrepreneur's founder's vision, right? What you don't want to change is the vision. You want to help with, is the objective reasonable? Can you get there? How do you get there? What's the strategy to get there? What are the tactics to get there? But yeah, I think particularly in entrepreneurial leaders, tend to be involved with businesses that can grow very quickly, and need some help just thinking through things, particularly around building that organization that will support their growth.
That's pretty interesting. You have rightly pointed out that it is important to get it's a bigger vision, I must say, because when someone is starting a business, probably he or she can start it in form of solopreneur, only one person, or what we call as one person company. And when the of course the business goes up, there has to be a team doing different work. Probably agility has to be there, and all these things. And of course, for this, it's always better to learn from who has handled such kind of situation in bigger companies. Again, this brings the concept of mentorship, definitely. And secondly, you have rightly pointed out, checking the concerns and getting into the open-ended questions. So this is one of the key functions. This is what I must say. It could be the doubt clearance. It could be the clarity of vision it brings. It could be finding out whether the next step which the person is taking with it is good or bad, or some rectification required, some business model change, alteration, or modification. So this is there. And you have rightly pointed out, when in order to make the company big, or during the scale up stage, mentorship is one of the things, indispensable things, I must say, which is required. Right. I'll go to my next point: mentorship and industry exposure. The mentor plays a dual role of both a teacher and a connector, thus providing access to industry talents and connections that could potentially invest in the business or offer their skill and expertise. These new connections would introduce the right talent to the business and connect the owner with the target market. How this can be of help to the business founder? Over to you, Ted.
Yeah, well, I think it's a terrific point. And it kind of gets me back to my original thing about sort of intertwining networking with mentorship, right? They're very closely associated, right? And I've always felt, and in my own career, when I've sort of looked at where do I create the most value, and in the end, it's in my understanding of sort of markets, products, and services for the industry that I'm in, right? So I mean, I understand that really, really well, and I think particularly as an entrepreneur, whether you're starting out, you're starting out to build a car or an electric bike or whatever it might be, having people that on your that you're getting advice from understand that industry well. Now, they may not understand this in the same way or from the same point of view as the entrepreneur, but in helping to build perspective around the markets, to having the contacts within that industry, to be able to introduce that entrepreneur to thought leaders within a particular industry, to be able to take them to the the different associations and places where people in specific industries gather and do that. I think that's indispensable, and I think that would probably be one of the things that I'd be looking for if I was an entrepreneur and trying to develop something in a specific industry. If you're in the restaurant industry, as an example, you'd want to find somebody, an advisor that has a track record in that industry, that knows people in that industry, and then it can help you think about that industry, right? So it's all sort of wrapped into one package. As you do it. I think the other thing too is people, if you're an entrepreneur and you've got a good idea, experienced people in that industry, they'll want to get to know you, right? They'll be open to having a talk or a chat or whatever and beginning to develop a relationship. because they've spent their entire career probably in that industry, and are interested in that industry, and are interested in what changes are going to happen. And most of those changes really come kind of from the grassroots, and people with a slightly different idea of a changing market that maybe people that have been in the industry a long time don't fully appreciate the potential impact of it, whether it be digital or some way that that's different than the market's currently being serviced.
Wow, that's really great. You have rightly pointed out that mentors, introduce the entrepreneurs, or probably the startup founders, or whatever we call them as, to the industry leaders. It is very important, because first is definitely increasing the network is number one, and second, this increases the chances of collaboration, because the foundation of business is collaboration. Probably it could be the client or customer and the business collaboration, or it could be peer-to-peer collaboration, or it could be vendor or business collaboration, whatever it is. This leads to the collaboration. And second point, which I really like, is this: it gives a one package. Mentorship is one package which has got so many benefits. It could be funding, could be one option, connecting to the fundraising event. It could be the industry leaders, probably the industrial associations, so on. So this one package concept is really it's important, it's interesting, and it's possible only with mentorship.
Yeah.
I'll go to my next point: mentorship and shared knowledge, experience, and vision. The mentors have been around the block enough to assess situation, even if they do not have the direct experience in that particular industry. Thus, mentors can provide advice to entrepreneurs from their past experiences. Due to their journey full of trials and errors, they possess a unique insight and knowledge. Occasionally, business owners can have tunnel vision, but mentors ensure that the entrepreneurs identify the drawbacks of their business plans, models, or decisions, and look beyond the original scope. What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great point. Yeah, the way that I think about it, so I'm just personally, I tend to work from the markets back, right? So I think about markets first, and then I work my way back in terms of strategy and all those things, right? How do I apply what I'm doing to the markets that I serve? And so the way I think about it is, it's like a lens, right? So what you want with a mentor is, if you're an entrepreneur and you're right in the thick of it, and you're making calls and you're trying to sell people on your ideas, you can get pretty close to so close that you're not sort of sitting back a little bit and looking at the bigger picture, right? So I think one thing a mentor can help do is build perspective around what you're trying to accomplish, and sort of help people step back a little bit, take a little bit wider look at what they're doing. And so, this idea that, you should be able to look at a problem like you would with a microscope, right? You can look at it more broadly, or you can narrow down on the problem. And that's a big part of, I think, what mentors should be doing, particularly with entrepreneurial leaders. Because by definition, an entrepreneurial leader is probably going to be working, 78 hours a week, and they're going to be working on getting, the next qualification, or the next customer to agree to buy something from them, or they're going to be involved with their finance, their bankers, trying to set up, cash to feed their objectives. And so I think it's really important to have somebody, again, a trusting relationship, somebody that can look back, somebody who's not going to be judgmental about what they're trying to accomplish, really kind of trying to understand what they're trying to accomplish, and offering perspective around it and ideas. And it's kind of the thing where, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And maybe you could do this, or maybe I know, again, to your point about somebody in your industry, did you talk to this person? Did you go to the FDA, or did you go to this body, that controls what happens in this industry to get your products approved? These are the kinds of things I think a good mentor can do, helping an entrepreneur build a business. Because again, the entrepreneur is going to be spending, more time than than they have really trying to get their business up and running, and having somebody that can kind of help them every once in a while, step out of the fray and just have a discussion about where they're at, where they're going. Are the choices that you made taking you there? Are you going how far can you get with the cash that you have, and how do you have to think about maybe getting the next round of cash for your your objective? So yeah.
Well, you have mentioned certain very good points. First is definitely what you have mentioned is to build a perspective around whatever is the business idea or business model, you to build a perspective. Second is to have a wider look. Most of the time, as I have already mentioned, that most of the time business founders are too obsessed with their business idea. They cannot see the fault. They cannot find any weakness. They find they can do everything with their business idea, but actually that doesn't happen. So this is the wider look, and you have wonderfully compared this mentorship with a microscope. Either you can have a micro vision or you can have a broader vision. So probably with a problem, with a issue, either we can have a micro vision on the issue itself, or probably we can look around and find some other solution out there. So it's a wonderful comparison, I must say. And the fourth is to understand the things, not to be judgmental. I think this is the most important point, because while a mentee speaks to his mentor, he should not think that his idea will be judged. Rather, that mentor should understand what exactly the mentee want to do, and instead of being judgmental. It's a wonderful point which you have given. Now, it brings me to my last point: the problems in mentorship journey. It is quite rare, but we have seen that sometimes things do not go well in the mentorship journey. It may be due to various reasons. I'm not getting deep into the reasons, but such type of incidents are quite disturbing. How should a startup founder handle such kind of situation? Over to you.
Yeah, well, I think the first, you need to always be honest with yourself, right? Or first of all, it's good when you enter into a mentoring relationship to have sort of an understanding of what each party's trying to get out of the out of that interaction, and that collaboration. And then I think, like everything else, you have to be honest with yourself. Are you getting that? And making a change is not a bad thing. I mean, sometimes you have to make a change. Sometimes you might have more than one mentor. You might have 2 or 3 mentors. Sometimes situations change with the mentor themselves. Maybe they get busy and they don't have enough time. And so all of these kind of normal things that you have in any kind of a relationship. So I would think about it like a relationship with a friend or a spouse or anybody else, right? Are you getting, what you need out of the relationship, and are you being honest with the person about, look, this is great, and you've helped me, but I think it's now, I'm getting to a different level now. I think I need to move on to a different mentor to focus on this area of my business, right? So, mentors, like everything else, fit in kind of a time and space. The same kind of mentors that you had earlier in the career might be a lot different later in your career. And so, and mentorship relationships by definitions are they can be long-term, but they tend to have kind of a beginning and an end, depending upon when the mentee gets to a point where they really don't need the advice of the mentor. Is not, they need to go on to another mentor, right? So I think having, again, I would look at it like any other important relationship in your life, where you need to be honest with, both sides need to be honest. I mean, as a mentor, you could be spending a lot of time and people aren't feeding back to you that you're being helpful to them, right? So if I'm not being helpful to them, then it's maybe I should try and help somebody else, right? So these are all that's how my personal life, I've had very good success. But my mentors have been, I've had mentors for 2, 3, 4 years, and then have moved on to something else where I've needed a different kind of mentor for that next step. And, you need to just you need to be honest about that and where it's going. It doesn't mean that you're done with that previous mentor, but you're taking on another mentor to get to another area. So it's tricky, but I mean, that's, this is, I think what people don't get is the responsibility that you have as a mentee, right? To be able to explain what it is you're needing and hoping for and trying to understand. And then also, when to move on to the next step or the next mentor.
Wow, that's pretty interesting, I must say. Like you have rightly mentioned, mentorship is equivalent to any kind of relationship. Probably it could be relationship between two friends, or probably with spouse, or whatever you take it. The first point which you have rightly mentioned, that it is important for anyone to be honest what exactly the person is doing and what exactly the person expects from a mentor. So being honest is the first step, and this is pretty important, I must say. I must give more weightage to the point. And secondly, what you have mentioned, that understand what one wants. Different stages, you have mentioned that different stages have got different needs. Probably when the person is starting, he or she will have a different sort of want or need, or goal could be different. At the same time, when the person is going for an IPO, or a company is going for an IPO, probably, so obviously the kind of mentorship he or she, an entrepreneur or a founder, will be looking will be completely different. And the third point is, you have rightly mentioned, it's a bit tricky point, but at times we have to decide and make a change. Many a times you have rightly pointed out the mentors might get busy, or probably we have to make a next step. Probably one mentor specializes on one aspect of business. Probably we are now looking for a different aspect of business. It's not that we are completely, leaving this person. Probably the relation continues, but sometimes we have to go for a next step. We have to take a next step in life. But that's how the journey goes on. It's a very nice points which you have mentioned. So this brings us to the end of our show. Any closing remarks would you like to give, Ted?
Well, one, just thank you. I admire what you're doing, and you're being entrepreneurial in your efforts with the podcast, and I appreciate having the opportunity to talk about mentorship. As I said, I mean, particularly with entrepreneurs, I think it's critically important, because you do have a lot of entrepreneurs come from non-traditional backgrounds, right? So, and typically a non-entrepreneur is going to be thinking differently than the mainstream, right? So, you want to encourage that, and you want to help develop that. And but many entrepreneurs fail because things grow too quickly, and then they don't actually have the experience to manage and run the business as it gets larger. So it's a very important subject, and I appreciate having the opportunity to spend the time with you talking about it. It's something I really think is important.
So nice of you. So nice. So you have rightly pointed, a lot of the entrepreneurs of the present age come from a non-traditional background. That means that their previous generation do not have any entrepreneurship experience. I'm one of the example, because I belong from a family of government service people, because my father was in a government service. Even my whole family is in government service. Probably I'm the odd man out, but I'm enjoying the journey. But of course, it's full of hardship, it's full of struggle, and of course, it's success. It's full of success as well. So it's a part of life. It's absolutely a part of life. So this brings us to the end of our show. I personally thank Ted for taking out his time and coming to our show. If you have any question, please write in the comment section, and I'll also give a link, probably the Twitter link of Ted, using which you can keep in, you can follow Ted and you can connect with Ted as well. And I have found some of the finest tweets from his Twitter handle. Please go and visit his Twitter handle, and you will get some of the finest insight of business. I'll be back with many such episodes. Till then, stay tuned, stay connected, have a great day. Thank you once again, Ted, for being a part of the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.